rules light, heavy everything else. One day all will blacken and burn, just as the two-headed basilisks have predicted. The world is dying, time is short. How will you face these last days, robbing graves for soil-stained wealth, or facing down the apocalypse, hoping it can be fought?
Pretty metal.
Oh, is it?
I hate to say it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
not to be contradictory, but it's very metal.
I guess I didn't know all that stuff was metal. Anyway, follow me?
That's everything you need to know about this game. Mork Borg is the art punk black metal retro clone RPG developed by Pelle Nilsson, Johan Noor, and Dead People with Stockholm Kartell, which is a collective of RPG creators based in Stockholm. You can pick this up from Free League Publishing, I believe. And Mork Borg is perhaps one of the most controversial and beloved RPGs on the market right now, I would say. Most notably, its very intense graphic design and layout choices have made this game a standout in the community. And as you can see, the product itself is astounding, and it's as interesting to look at as it is to read and play. So I want to get right into this book, and full disclosure, this is one of my favorite RPGs on the market right now. But before we do, about 90% of my audience isn't subscribed to my channel. And so if you haven't subscribed yet and you love RPGs like Mork Borg, I'd highly recommend considering subscribing. Thank you so much, and let's get right into it. So, the first thing that I actually want to highlight about Mork Borg is not in the front of the book, a little sneak peek there. It is actually all the way in the back of the book. And that is because this is essentially everything you need to run Mork Borg right here on the back page of the book. It is astounding how well the creators here at Stockholm Kartell managed to condense everything you need to play D&D basically on one page here. You can see the core abilities, tests, right? You roll a d20, you add your modifier, and then you either pass or fail. There's a difficult rating system here for GMs. Everything that you need to know about adventuring. There's a reaction table here for NPCs, kill, angered, etc. Resting, getting infected, morale rolls from more old school versions of D&D. This is essentially a BX clone with some heavy homebrewing involved. Parameters for rolling morale. Powers and scrolls. All magic in Mork Borg is cast through spells, and it is incredibly zany and powerful. Only through scrolls, and that is explained right here. We'll get into that in a bit. Combat, it's a d6 initiative. The GM rolls a 1d6. If it's a 1 through 3, the enemies start. If it's a 4 through 6, the characters start. And your individual initiative, if you want to do it that way, is your agility modifier plus d6. And that's basically, there's crits and fumbles, etc., armor tiers, but this is basically everything you need to play D&D. And that's really amazing and worth mentioning. So now I'm going to flip back to the start, and we're going to go through the book together. While we're here, actually, I figure it's worth highlighting the back. As you can see, it says, really not suitable for those under 16 years of age. I would agree. There's some pretty intense content in this book. The satanic art speaks for itself, but I also do want to highlight what's written on the back here. A doom album metal of a game, a spiked flail to the face, rules light, heavy everything else. One day all will blacken and burn, just as the two-headed basilisks have predicted. The world is dying, time is short. How will you face these last days, robbing graves for soil-stained wealth, or facing down the apocalypse, hoping it can be fought?
Pretty metal.
That's everything you need to know about this game. Alright, let's get into it now. If you guys have watched any of my other content on the channel, you know how much I love random tables, and Mork Borg has them in spades as well. There's so much content in this book, I need to keep moving at a pretty decent clip here, but you can generate ridiculous kind of, Viking sounding names on this table, like Graft, Nifil, and then you have D10 occult treasures here, traps and other devilry, random weather table here, and what really needs to be highlighted is that this book just commits to its style and flavor. The weather can be lifeless gray, hammering rain, piercing wind, deafening storms, black as night, dead quiet. soup thick mist, crackling frost, irritating drizzle, roaring thunder, and grave-like cold, right? So this game really relishes the feeling of despair and just being metal and brutal. This game really is the metalocalypse of Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't think it takes itself nearly as seriously as some people believe. And I do think that's a part of the charm, and I do think that the creators in the community kind of lean into the unknowingness of, oh, are we taking this seriously or not? I think you can. I have played Mork Borg many times now, and I have taken it seriously, and I've also taken it a little less seriously. So it's really up to you. But this is kind of, we're getting into the explanations of the world here. And again, you can see this very intense, in-your-face art direction is a bit controversial, but I love it. I mean, this book works as a table piece as much as it does a D&D book, and I mean that as a compliment. So I'll read a little bit here, and again, this is just getting into the lore of the world. When the world was but water, dust and clouds thick with plague-fat flies, came she, first of the basilisks. From the cracks of Bergen crypt she crawled. She bears the head of denial, Lucy, who looks up and down, yet all shall be well. Her twin Ark, head of deception, claims to be the first prophet of truths, now prostituted by Verhu. Few have ever seen her, the oldest, but many will walk her twin paths. A lot of the lore, it's very, there's a lot of gravitas, it's verbose, and it's flavorful. Others may argue it's also a bit indecipherable. It definitely has a bit of like a Dark Souls feeling to it. I would say that the lore is intentionally vague, but there is enough here for you to play in the world. Whenever I've run Mork Borg, we haven't really, to be honest, I haven't put much emphasis on the world itself. I really just lean into the flavor of the book to help kind of guide my narrative descriptions and my GMing when we're playing. The Western Kingdom, this is a description of different areas that you could travel to when you're playing a campaign of Mork Borg. And now we're really getting into the rules section. Also, I have to say, this book is super glossy. The paper is very high quality. It's also stitch bound, as you can see here, and it comes with a sewn-in bookmark, which is always a plus in my eyes. But if there's glare, I do apologize. I tried my best to get a better lighting setup here, but I cannot help how shiny and glossy this book is. So what makes playing Mork Borg, if you do choose to play Mork Borg in a long-form campaign, is that the idea is that there's a timer, right? The world is ending no matter what. When you start your game of Mork Borg, you're kind of starting at the beginning of the end. And then through a series of dice rolls, you essentially determine how many days are left in your world before the world ends. And as that timer ticks down in the world, you use these psalms and other things to basically more and more terrible things keep happening. And then eventually the world ends, and the rules as written describe that you should burn your copy of Mork Borg after the world ends and your campaign is over. Obviously, I believe that is very tongue-in-cheek, I should say. I wouldn't recommend burning your copy of Mork Borg, although I have joked around with my friends about how we should do that one day. But again, I think that really it helps keep you in the spirit of this game, and it does prove that, or show really, that when you're playing Mork Borg, this is not the game to play if you're interested in a long, sprawling, heroic campaign with a ton of character growth and this and that, and then the other thing. This is about rolling characters that look like Sauron and a skull with a Viking helmet, probably pretty nasty dudes or chicks, and just really getting into that kind of gonzo, rough and tumble, doom metal, dope smoker mentality that this game is really all about. And you can see here as well that actually the creators say that Mork Borg is dedicated to Dead from Mayhem, R.I.P. Let the good times roll. A little wink at the audience as well. But that just shows the respect for the scene and the source material that this game comes from. But also, I think it's worth taking everything with a grain of salt and just rolling and having fun with it. And when I say roll, I mean rolling, because another part of why I love Mork Borg so much is that there's random tables for everything, and it is so much fun to just randomize every aspect of character creation, especially in Mork Borg, because we have come up with some pretty like in-depth characters who have ticks and quirks and terrible habits and things about them, but then also some endearing qualities as well, and lots of just goofy scenarios. You can roll D4 monkeys that ignore but love you. They each have D4 plus 2 HP, and they punch and bite for D4 damage. You could have an exquisite perfume. That came up in a one shot that I ran. A player used their exquisite perfume to their advantage. Grappling hook, which is obviously, or a tent. You can just have like a 5 meals worth of lard, where you're literally eating lard in a pinch, it says. But of course, a resourceful player could use a glorpy handful of lard in like a lot of ways. That's flammable, right? You could make bombs, or you could slip and slide on it. There's lots of fun to be had with these randomized tables in Mork Borg. And then here we have the process for creating a character is laid out for you. You can randomize everything, or you can also use pre-written classes that are in the book, and we're going to get into that now. So now you have the weapons when you roll on the table to see what you get. And one is a femur, so you roll a d10 to determine, or a d6 if you start with a scroll, which allows you to cast magic. And then all the different weapons that you can use in Mork Borg are depicted here on this graphic. And yes, you can roll a femur, and I've had characters roll with a femur. And you can use this book if you're playing other games. I typically play old school essentials, but I use Mork Borg all the time. And then here are the more effective weapons like the flail, the crossbow, and I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce this. I'm doing it, I guess. Zweihander. Not sure how you pronounce. It's basically like a giant bastard sword that does D10 damage. So that is the jackpot of weapons. And then of course armor, which is you roll D4 or only a D2 if you start with the scroll. So if you opt to use magic, you are one chaotic guy, because magic is not always so effective in Mork Borg. When it is incredibly effective, but when it isn't. But it is a lot of fun. And then here's the equipment table. So you can roll up some random equipment here. Look at how gorgeous this art is. I mean, just look at this. It is a piece of art. Playing Mork Borg is playing art. Anyway, okay. So here, there's 4 core abilities. So it's not the 6 from D&D. It's just distilled down to agility, which is how you defend, balance, swim, or flee. Presence, which is how you perceive, aim, charm, and wield powers, which is scrolls, magic. Strength is crush, lift, strike, grapple. And toughness is resisting poison, cold, heat, and your general survivability. So you roll 3d6 down the line. You know we love to hear that here at PaladinProse. And that's how you generate each score. Obviously, your score is going to give your ability modifier. Tests is the core mechanic of Mork Borg. You roll your d20. You add or subtract your modifier based on the skill that your GM calls for, and then you assess whether you assess whether you succeed or fail, and move forward. Carrying capacity is tied to strength. And you can see that violence is how the combat rules are described here. Hit points begin with your toughness plus d8. If you fall to exactly 0 HP, which admittedly almost never happens, then you're broken, and you roll on a broken table, which we will get to, which is essentially some sort of permanent affliction to your character. You could use the broken table for a fumble table as well, right? So if you roll a crit fail, a natural 1, the GM might roll on that table and see what kind of carnage ensues. Violence here, speaking of carnage ensuing. So initiative, as we discussed earlier, you roll that 1d6 and see who goes. It's fast and chaotic. There's not a lot of rules laid out here specifically. This is the bare minimum. Rolling with your melee is strength, and it's almost always a DR 12, so a DR you can see of attacks and defense are modified with any test. So essentially it's just you have to hit that number. You have to beat it. If you are broken, right, you roll a d4. You fall unconscious for d4 rounds, you awaken with d4 HP. Or you could hemorrhage, death in d2 hours unless treated. Or you're just dead. Crit, when you roll a natural 20, it's doubled, pretty standard. And fumble, natural 1. The weapon breaks or is lost somehow. So that also shows, it's not laid out in the book. The book doesn't say this, but you need to use your intuition that you have as a GM to understand that, like in this world, everything is breaking. Everything is run down. The world is ending. These weapons are not, not knights in shining armor type stuff here, right? Rusted, crumbling blades, essentially. I love the art here. This is explains the rules for resting, reaction rolls, and morale checks. And getting better or worse is how the game describes leveling up. The game master decides when a character should be improved, essentially milestone leveling from 5th edition or other more modern, so no XP here. It can be after completing a scenario, killing mighty foes, or bringing home treasure. Boom. So it really, it just outlines any philosophy you have of what leveling up could be in D&D could work here. When this happens, the following things occur. You get more HP. You roll 6d10. If that result is equal to or greater than your current maximum HP, increase it by d6. That's an interesting way to go about it. Left in the debris you find, 1 through 3 is a nothing, or you can get some silver or some scrolls, which is good. And ability change. Roll a d6 against every ability. Results equal to or greater than the ability, increase it by 1 to a maximum of +6. Results below the ability, decrease it by 1. So your stats can go up or down in Mork Borg over time. That's why it says getting better or worse. Caveat there. But that's a lot of fun too. So powers refers to magic in Mork Borg. And magic comes from unclean scrolls, of which are all laid out here. So a few so-called powers are known, and they are usually found written in scrolls, as we said here. The GM decides the effect on a crit or fumble, but on page 44 there is an optional table of arcane catastrophes, because of course there is. And I won't go into every single one here, but just for example, let's see, death. All creatures within 30 feet lose a total of 4d10 HP. Or sacred scrolls. We have bestial speech. You may speak with animals for DT 20 minutes. When I ran Mork Borg, I had a player that used sacred scrolls, but when I described the blinding light, which one is it here? I'm not sure. Light or pitch black, this one. So false dawn or knight's chariot. The way I described it and what was happening in the dungeon at the time, it was very intense. So magic in Mork Borg definitely has a very almost disturbing presence in the game. At least that's how I like to run it. The Basilisk's Demand. So this is tied to the lore. You can ignore this, but I think really this is just like a goal that you have to appease for the Basilisk, right? You roll a d20, like gems from overflowing pockets. So like steal from the rich is how I would interpret that. Like these are just chaotic. These are just chaos catalysts, basically. A body mutilated by those who loved it in life, like geez. The gall of Crypt Vulture, moss upon which a dying man has slept. Just ridiculous, over the top, brutal quest starters, basically. This is a really badass page, the omens. You can roll a bad omen, basically. Lower damage dealt to you by D. Oh, I'm sorry, no. The omens are, you take an omen and then basically they're kind of like get out of jail free cards that you can use to kind of increase survivability. Basically put some power back into the player's hand a little bit in a fun way. So you can neutralize a crit or a fumble or lower a test, etc. But you have to cash in your omens. Essentially. Trauma, terrible traits, right? So you could be endlessly aggravated and worried. which is a little too close to home. Egocentric, nihilistic, prone to substance abuse, conflicted and shrewd, vindictive. So again, just really leaning into playing as bastards. Here's the broken bodies table that I was talking about earlier. So if you become broken or you just want to use this as a fumble table, you could have corpulent, ravenous drooling for the rest of your life after getting bonked over the head with a mace or something, right? These again are just bad, like annoying traits. You could be a pyromaniac, you stutter when you lie. Things like that too. Stuttering while you're lying, like that would definitely inform some awesome roleplay moments if the players are into it as much as the GM. Pyromaniac, of course, you can only imagine. Don't give them lard. They won't eat it. They'll blow something up with it. Can't stop drinking once you start. Things like that. Just, leading into chaos. Troubling tales, again, the whole group can share the same backstory, or groups within the group can share a tale. Or the GM can quickly give history to seemingly mundane character. So again, this is just a D20 table that you can roll on to come up with a quick backstory. Or if, your players meet an NPC, and as players do, they're like, hey, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? How long have you been here? What are you doing here? And then suddenly, they fall in love with the hobo that's walking by on the street. You could roll and maybe roll a 7. An identity thief who recently killed and replaced this person. Jeez. I mean, I literally just randomly picked one. I didn't even look at it first. But immediately, if you roll that as a GM, imagine the kind of fun you can have with your players with that. Arcane Catalyst. You read it wrong, you illiterate fool. Oh man, see, it's really just laying into you, dude. This book mocks you. But I'm into it. These are the arcane fumbles. Let's see here. 3. The illusion of the celestial fear is lifted. You now see what dwells beyond, and it sees you. Gazing upon a clear night sky drives you mad with fear. And if you do have a fumble, a caster who rolls the same result twice explodes in screaming black fire in which the faces of the dead are seen. D6 damage each round. Water only feeds this life. Water only feeds this fire, I should say. So look forward to being a spellcaster in Mork Borg. Fang Deserter, these are the pre-generated, like pre-made classes basically, if that is your flavor. The like rogue or thief analog in this game is called Gutterborn Scum. The Esoteric Hermit, I believe this is like a Dope Smoker reference as well, if you're into doom metal like I am. And this is one of my friend's favorite pre-gen classes. We joke about the Esoteric Hermit quite a bit. Wretched Loyalty, basically you can play a bastard aristocrat if you so choose. Heretical Priest would be a cleric, but it's Mork Borg, so of course they're heretical. Occult Herbmaster. I mean, look at this spread. Look at this art. I love the masks. Born of the mushroom, raised in the glade, watched by the eye of the moon in a silver black pool. I mean, dude, sometimes I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I am the target audience for this game, but sometimes it just leaves me speechless when you read something like that. How could you not just want to break out the beer and pretzels with your friends and throw on a record and roll some dice, man? Seth the Goblin, look at him. Bent. This is just like Bent Scum is basically your typical bandit, and we're in the monster section now. There's just a few offerings of monsters here. There's the Zukuma Berserker, which is basically like a super metal bugbear. In an OSE game that I was running, I just replaced the bugbear with this guy, and it was wild. As if from nowhere, frenzied ambushed in dusty hallways and from behind stacked black stones of catacombs, this guy attacks twice per round but doesn't have time for defense. So it's just a flat 10 to hit, but they attack twice. They could have a huge warhammer, chainsword, heavy mace, or long flail, and they do a lot of damage. But again, it's really up to the GM to lean into that. They're flailing around. You know, and then like look at the splatter, the art. It really helps just capture running this game. The Rat Wraith is essentially a lich, blood-drenched skeleton. Oh, well, I stand corrected. I forgot that they do have a lich here as well, but of course they do. Undead necromancers, the liches be. And then I love this troll, and this Mork Borg party facing up against it. Cowards, despite their size, usually retreat if badly wounded. Never forget who hurt them. They grow larger during their healing process and will definitely come back stronger than before. Any HP healed is added to their maximum HP every time they return. Add another d6 to their damage. So these are just insanely... This is how, you know, you just have a reoccurring troll that continually comes back, harasses your party, getting ever stronger. That could be a lot of fun. I hate Lady Porcelain, very creepy. We have the Sphinx Grotesque, it's like a gargoyle. This guy, the Wicked Knife Wielder, Wyverns, looks like moray eels flying through the sky, can you imagine? All sorts of other like wicked demon-like NPCs and creatures. And now we've approached Rot Black Sludge, which is a pretty acclaimed, and deservedly so, one-shot dungeon and introductory dungeon crawl for Mork Borg. I have run Rot Black Sludge, and I absolutely loved it. My fiance, I think, left feeling disturbed. One of my good friends left as stoked as I was. And another player who had never played an RPG before left incredibly bewildered, but wanting to come back for more. So it was a good time. Let's see. I'll read the intro out, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video. It's getting quite long. You face execution for heretical theft, but a masked seer, a courtier of the Shadow King, offered you a chance at life. The king's one true heir, the son Aldon, is missing. Without an heir, the Shadow King will eventually be forced to hand his crown to his imbecile brother. Get him back discreetly, and wealth, life, and freedom will be yours. It's believed Aldon is imprisoned in the famous underground locale, a place no free man would willingly go, a place called the Accursed Den. And then there's D8 things the seer may see, tell you about. There's cannibals. The lamps burn red and the lamp oil touched with human blood. So this is basically like prophecies that the GM can roll to tell the players through role playing out this encounter with the seer. That really does add a lot of ambiance and flavor and gravity to the situation. Here's the encounter table. So as we get into the dungeon, you'll see that it will call for rolling on these encounter tables. What I really like too is as you're running the dungeon, the individual depictions of the dungeon layout here, and then you can see like where you are. So as your players are searching the dungeon, and the players really should be mapping it out on their own, it's up to you to describe, you can also keep track of what's going on, where they are coming through the dungeon. As I said again, I don't really want to spoil this adventure. I don't really want to go too far in depth, but it's very flavorful. It was a lot of fun. My party did TPK at the very end, and it was intense, but a lot of fun. These skeletons playing on this massive pillar. You'll know if you get through the adventure, but I also want to highlight again how expertly the dungeon is laid out, and how easy it is to run, and how much fun it is to run, thanks to this amazing layout and game design. The Rot Black Sludge is an oily black substance that reeks of sulfur, to give you guys an idea of what your players might be getting into. Very, very foreboding end boss. And that's about it. Even more reasons to risk one's life. So these are just adventure prompts at the end here. So again, this can be used for any, all of these random tables could be used for any RPG. And in fact, I do that quite frequently. Talk of an unexplored island. Rumors of cursed treasure. Kidnapped blood wizard. A strange ship ran around. A weirdness leaves Bergen crypt. 7 women with black eyes. Map the land in the West. PC doppelgangers go berserk. I mean, you could roll on this chart several times and just come up with a campaign from there and go. And that's what Mork Borg is really all about. It's about not overthinking it. It's about rolling a bunch of dice and going and trying to get to the end of the world so you can burn your book. And that about wraps it up. So, in conclusion, as you guys might be able to tell, I really do like this game. I wouldn't recommend it if the design choices bother you or they're just not your jam. Then I would say this game is definitely not your jam. But it has also essentially spawned a complete subgenre of RPGs now, like Cyborg, which you can look forward to on the channel, Pirate Borg, there's Ork Borg, it's all about orcs, and it's a lot of fun. I love the creative spirit of it, and creating third-party content for this game is incredibly easy. The creators are incredibly generous with how they treat the community, and there is a massive following for the game. So if any of this sounds interesting to you or any of this excites you, I highly recommend picking up the game. I highly recommend getting involved with the third-party community. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend you subscribe to the channel because you can look forward to plenty of more enthusiastic RPG content like this in the future. And let's continue to learn how to become better storytellers together. Until next time, venture forth.
Pretty metal.